Hi, this is William from Great Affordable Watches, and in this video I'm gonna go through my watch collection. I thought that what better way to start this new year than go through the state of my watch collection. And before we jump into my current collection, I wanna mention what has left the collection since my previous video about 7 months ago. The first watch that has left the collection is the vintage Omega Seamaster. I didn't think that it had a place in my collection, as I have a lot of white dial dress watches, especially vintage dress watches, so I sold that one and I don't really regret it, as I still have a vintage Omega Seamaster in the collection, which we're gonna talk more about later. I also sold my King Seiko 5626 7040 chronometer, and I had 3 King Seikos in the collection and I had to get rid of at least one, so I decided to sell the 5626 or 5625 7040. I've also sold my Seiko Cocktail Time, or the Seiko SKX013, as that watch didn't fit my collection as well. I think it's a bit too big for being a dress watch in my opinion, and I tend to wear vintage dress watches when I use a dress watch, so yeah, I sold that one as well. But now let's jump into my current collection, and we can start off with the watches that has not left the collection since my previous update. The first watch is the King Seiko 5256 8010 Special, and this is a special watch for me, and this is definitely a keeper, as this watch is pretty hard to find, and I think this was the last King Seiko, or one of the last King Seikos ever produced, and it features the 5256 special movement, which can be considered one, if not the highest grade of King Seiko movement. So yeah, this is definitely a keeper, and I really love the look of this watch. But this watch is in need of a service, so before I start using it a lot, I will have to get it serviced. The next watch that is still in the collection is the Hamilton Khaki Field 38 Automatic, and as you guys have seen in my previous videos, this is a great watch and perhaps the best watch at around $500, and perhaps the true competitor to the Seiko SARB 033 in its price range. Yeah, this is a really great looking versatile watch with 100 meter water resistance, relatively thin for being 100 meter water resistance, a great 80 hours of power reserve movement from ETA, Hamilton H10, and yeah, I just love the look of this watch. A really versatile piece, you can definitely dress it up and dress it down. I also have the Seiko SKX013 still in my collection, and this is definitely one of my favorite watches of all time, and I have added an original Jubilee bracelet from Seiko to this watch, and yeah, I think this combo is just a perfect match in my opinion. Yeah, it's a bit flimsy, but yeah, I really like this bracelet. And this watch, of course, it got the 7S26 movement, which is not the best movement. It's a workhorse movement, of course, but I just love the way this watch feels and wears on the wrist and how it looks. And this is definitely a keeper in my collection. This is probably one of the watches I'd use the most. Yeah, I'm just really satisfied with this watch, and definitely one of my favorite watches. And of course, I also got the King Seiko 5626 7110, and this is definitely one of my absolute favorite dress watches of all time. And this piece is actually in great condition, and it got that typical King Seiko grammar of design, which I really love. And yeah, this piece is just one of my favorite watches, especially dress watches. I also got the Tudor Black Bay 58 still in my collection, of course, and that's probably no surprise to you who have seen my previous videos about this watch. And yeah, this piece is just my absolute favorite watch I have ever owned, and I'm just in love with this watch. It got perfect proportions. I really love the dial. I really love the domed sapphire crystal. It's fairly thin as well, and yeah, this is definitely my favorite watch in the collection, and perhaps one of the best watches, especially for the money you can get right now. Tudor have actually, and Rolex for that matter, have actually increased the prices of the Tudor Black Bay and Rolex Mariner. I think all Tudor and all Rolex watches have had a price increase the 1st of January, which is of course to be expected, but always sad to see. So this watch is now a bit more expensive. I don't exactly know how much this costs right now, but I think it's about 10% of a price increase, unfortunately. And this watch also got a long waiting list, so yeah, it's a bit hard to get still, but if you want it, you can definitely find one, especially on the used market. I also still have the Credor Phoenix in my collection, and this is a high-end automatic chronograph from Seiko or Credor. And as I said in my previous videos, this is as close as you can get to a automatic Grand Seiko chronograph. It got the 6S78 movement, and this is basically the same foundation, or it shares the same foundation as the 9S Grand Seiko family of movements. And I think this watch is 40mm, so it's a great size, and I think it looks really nice in my opinion. And I've done a recent video about this watch, so if you want to know more about it, you can check it out. I can highly recommend this piece. It's a all-round great automatic chronograph. I also still got the Omega Seamaster vintage, of course, and this is definitely one of my favorite vintage Omega Seamasters. I really love the dial, the champagne dial, and also the more sporty case than your typical vintage Seamaster. I'm a big fan of this watch. I think it looks really nice, and with the size of 36.5mm in diameter, it wears fairly big for a vintage Omega Seamaster. So let's move on to what is new in my collection, and we can start with the most boring piece perhaps, and it's a dress watch. It's a Rutina with an ETA movement inside. I think I picked this up for about $30, and for that price I think it was a great deal. It got a really nice champagne dial, and yeah, I really like this watch. I really like the look of it, but I don't use it that often, or I should say I don't use it at all, but for $30 I still think it was a great deal. I also got my grandfather's old gold Longines, and it's actually not working, but I will definitely keep this watch in my collection, as this is a great piece of memory of my grandfather, of course, and it's a good looking watch as well. Of course, solid gold, 8 carats, with a pretty nice dial, champagne or cream or silver perhaps. It do need a service. It's in pretty rough condition, rough shape when it comes to the movement, but I will definitely service this watch in the future to keep it as a memory of my grandfather. And the final piece in my collection, and this is also a new acquisition, and that's the Sinn 556IB. And if you have seen my review of this watch, and if you have not, you can check it out. I am a huge fan of this watch. The Sinn 556 lineup overall are perhaps the best value for money watches around $10,000 you can get. The case is absolutely brilliant, and I personally am a huge fan of this blue sunburst dial. I think the more dressy look of this watch compared to the 556 is something I personally like, but all 556 watches are just amazing in my opinion, and yeah, I will definitely keep this watch for a long time, as yeah, this is a great all-round piece. So that's all for today's video, and as you can see, not that much have changed since my previous update. I've sold a few watches that I didn't really wear at all, or was just laying around and was overlapping with other pieces. Of course, I still got a few vintage dress watches, but overall I'm really satisfied with my collection. I have a really hard time selling all of these watches, so I think I have starting to just appreciate these watches, and I don't really want to sell any of them, as I think these watches have a place in my collection, and I really like all of these watches on its own. So yeah, I will probably not sell any of these in the near future at least. But of course, as a collector or as a watch enthusiast, you never know what you end up selling or buying. But I have no really big watch purchasing plans in the future. Perhaps I will buy a Seiko SKX013 again. I believe that's one of my favorite watches at around $500. So yeah, I'll probably buy a SKX013. I have missed it since I sold it. And also let me know your favorite watches out of my collection. I would love to know that down in the comment section. Okay, thanks for watching, and if you like this video, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel for more watch related content if you haven't already. Okay, thanks for watching, and I hope I see you in the next one.